What is up, guys? I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're covering some more r/am I the butthole. If you'd like to skip the initial waffle, timestamps are in the description and along the timeline below, but if you are new here, please consider hitting that like, that subscribe and maybe that notification bell too. And that's only if you enjoyed the content, of course. Yesterday we had two new members. We had one on YouTube, Don Angel 188. Thank you so much for joining us. And also over on Patreon, we had DJ Subatomic Supernova. Great name, and thank you so much for joining us, as well as everyone for taking the time out of your days to come here and support the channel. It really does mean the world. And with that being said, let's just jump in to today's stories. Much love, guys. And our first story comes from a throwaway account. Am I the arsehole for losing it when my fiancé sold my and my late fiancé's engagement rings? I, 33 male, lost my late fiancé to a severe infection, sepsis, in 2016. I proposed to her when she was sick and we were planning on getting married 4 months after proposal. But she passed away and it was unexpected because her health was getting better. After being on life support for 10 hours, she died on the 3rd of the 7th 16 at 1 PM and was put to rest with her funeral on Saturday. This was so hard for me to deal with, and I had a hard time coping. The pain was unbearable. There was literally no place to just hide and forget about what happened. It's been 4 years. I'm moving on now. My then girlfriend, now fiancé of 2 months, we've been together for 16 months, came around and we started dating. Then I decided to take a step forward and propose to her. She moved in with me after I rented an apartment and changed my job. I kept my and my late fiancé's engagement rings and let her family keep most of her belongings before I moved. I have the rings along with a few photos and stuff we bought together. My fiancé noticed the rings and said that I was weird for still keeping engagement rings. I don't know why she'd think that. It's not like I wear my past engagement ring on my finger or anything, but she seemed uncomfortable that I was keeping them as mementos. I've been struggling with money lately and she brought up selling the rings a couple of times, but I just told her I'd work something out, since she'd get sensitive if I told her they were so important to me. She'd react to that. My and my late fiancé's rings were missing 2 days ago. She told me she sold them on Facebook for X amount of money and bought important stuff for the apartment to help with a thing or two. I lost it. I told her she had no right to take personal stuff and sell them online for her convenience and thinking she was helping. She lashed out saying she didn't expect me to blow up like that and tried to justify her behaviour by saying that I clearly still have feelings for my late fiancé and asked why I'd still keep my late fiancé's engagement ring when I already have a fiancé. I told her that she would never understand how much she hurt me and disrespected me by doing this. I asked her for some space and she said she wanted to spend the night at a friend's place till I figure out my priorities and realise I shouldn't have yelled like that. Oh my word. What I never understand in these stories, how people can lack so much compassion and how can you be jealous of someone who's passed away? I really don't understand. Of course OP's still going to have feelings for that person. They loved them, they wanted to marry them. Them passing away doesn't suddenly make them lose all those feelings. It just doesn't work like that. I'd be very wary about this woman that's in OP's life, but obviously I don't know all the ins and outs of it all. Let's have a look at the comments below to see what they say. JGay13 says, "You're not the arsehole. Your fiancé dropped these red flags. Number 1, she was jealous of a woman who passed on. 2, went behind your back and stole from you. 3, decided to sell personal things of yours. 4, as you put it, she disrespected you and your feelings. So she's an arsehole and a thief." OP replied saying, "I don't understand why she'd feel jealous. I give her all my attention and I never even talk about the past with her. I keep a lot to myself and I never bother her with my issues. Our relationship has been a priority to me ever since we got together, so her behaviour is just unreasonable, and for her to do this is just not okay, and I'm hurt she wouldn't respect my privacy and my personal belongings and decide for me." Vanda Joy says, "Not the arsehole, do not marry this girl. That was horrible and cruel of her." Is This Real Life says, "Find the buyer and tell them they are stolen property. Your fiancé is jealous of a ghost. Your fiancé that passed would not want you to be with someone who would treat you that way. Not the arsehole." Mandaloo says, "Find out who she sold them to and get them back. File a police report if you need to. This is theft. This would be a deal breaker for me. OP, I'm so sorry for your losses. Not the arsehole." Lady K says, "Not the arsehole, you should file a police report even if it means getting her arrested. Hopefully they can recover your stolen property. The relationship was dead the second she took cash from another person and handed them your things. She has no respect for you at all." Now there's like a little story within a story here of someone replying to this story, and it's a real powerful one and quite upsetting too, so Be warned. This is from Atermus 1860. Not the arsehole. I'm going to bare my soul on something here. In 2009, I was sexually assaulted for the third time in my life and was later diagnosed with PTSD. Late that year, maybe early next, I met a young man I will simply call Jay for this. Jay didn't take to me at first, but over time he began to see my pain and he began to help me. I was in the army, as was he, and he found out I had PTSD. He heard the things that others said about me and knew about the illegal gag order my command put me under about my late assault. He started inviting me down to his room so I didn't have to sleep alone. Some days I woke up crying / screaming with his voice and scent calming me. Other days I woke up to him laughing and claiming I drooled on him. Beds in barrack rooms are singles, not much space for two people, so a great deal of cuddling was necessary. Through these times he helped me sleep again, and the night terror / nightmares eased for a time. Then in 2011, he was killed in action. The last time I'd spoken to him, I was trying to work up the courage to tell him I was in love with him. He was deployed to Afghanistan at the time, and he interrupted to tell me this great woman he met during his mid-tour leave. I never admitted my feelings for him, and a month later, he was killed in action. I was head over heels for that man, and I was broken. I tell you this story of my past so that you understand I lost Jay suddenly. It was so painful for me, as painful as losing someone as close to me as your fiancé was to you. I even went to support groups for people who lost spouses at the recommendation of others to try to cope with my loss. I later tried to move on and dated and even became engaged to another man. And this man couldn't understand that I could still love him and still mourn Jay. Every fight he threw in my face that I was still in love with a dead man. It was the most painful thing I could have said and eventually led to him cheating on me. I tell you this to help you understand something. If she cannot understand that you can love her and still mourn / love the woman you lost as well, then she has no business being in your life. She will only ever use this as ammo against you. She is far too insecure for you and will never work to understand and work with your pain. Someday you will meet someone who can, but it is clearly not this one. And as someone that's gone through what OP is going through, you can, only respect that. So, amazing story from Atermus there. What do you guys think of this story? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to vote on that poll in the description for story 1. And our next story is from Brother Wants Card. Am I the arsehole for laughing in my brother's and my sister-in-law's faces when they demanded to use my credit card? So I am 22 female. I don't have much knowledge about finances and stuff, as I still live at home as I am at university. I do however pay my parents about £300 a month rent. I pay my own phone plan, buy material stuff when I want or need, pay out other services like music or whatever, and try to put as much as I can in savings whilst keeping enough in my main account for day-to-day purchases. Currently, I'm saving up for driving lessons and hope that I can pass decently. I can use some of my saving towards getting a car. I'm in my final year of uni, so I'll be done and able to work full time when all this happens. I also decided to get a credit card so I can learn how to manage credit wisely and build some up. My credit score is good for someone of my age and circumstance, but obviously it's nothing great in comparison for other stuff. I should point out that at most I only plan on using this card with a total adding up to £100. I've stuck to that so far and only actually used it twice for these purchases, only adding up to £80, and paid it off quickly. I do not plan on exceeding my limit anytime soon. I've heard far too many horror stories of people just using their credit card too much because it was handy and getting into debt. The only people I disclosed this to was my dad, as my mum has the tendency to blab to my brother and sister-in-law, both 28. She happened to overhear us talking one day, and before I knew it, my brother and sister-in-law got wind and asked me if they could use it. They both admitted they had debt spurned on by excessive credit card use, and thought that since I basically had nothing owed on mine, it was free money. I told them quite politely that I was really uncomfortable with that idea, and that I would owe the money, and I can't magic up that kind of money. Things went quiet until a few days later. They both turned up at the house. They were nice to start with, but basically started demanding I let them use the card, and they tried to manipulate my mother into guilting me into doing it. I got really angry, and when my brother said I owe it to them because they used to babysit me up until a couple of years ago, I laughed in their faces and walked out. When I came home, I learnt they tried to manipulate my dad, and he kicked them both out. My mother then tried, and he told her to go too, and she is currently staying with my brother and sister-in-law. The only person on my side is my dad, who tells me they're all trying to take me for a ride, and they're going to manipulate me because I'm young and they think I'm vulnerable. My brother, sister-in-law and mum on the other hand think it isn't a big deal letting someone else use my card. It's really messing with my head, and I just want everyone to stop being in an argument. Am I the arsehole? The biggest issue is the brother and sister-in-law looking at this and quoting free money. Nothing is free in this life. Not free money. Credit card money isn't free. And it's incredibly stupid for them to even think that way. And you're totally in the right. I wouldn't give them a credit card whatsoever. No way would I give them money like that. And that bullshit of trying to manipulate you, saying they babysat you. What the hell? However, I've got to say, good for your dad for sticking up for you and having your back on this. He's totally right in this situation, and do not give them that card. But let's have a look at the comments below to see what they say. Scottish Girl Syndrome says, not the arsehole, do not let them bully you into committing fraud. The only people to blame for their debts are themselves, and if you let them use your card, they'll rack up further debt. They won't be liable as they'll be under your name. They stacked up the cost so you'll be the one out of pocket, and they'll damage your credit score even further. I think having a set limit is really mature and a smart thing to do. Do not give in for the love of God just because you're young and don't know much about credit and finance. Your dad is right, they're trying to take advantage of you. Edit, I don't know why you people are giving this comment so many awards, as it's literally common sense, but thanks anyway. Riri202 says, not the arsehole, your family are being incredibly manipulative. This isn't free money and they're trying to saddle you with debt. Muted Definition says, definitely not the arsehole, it's just like your dad said. They're trying to manipulate and use you. You owe them nothing. If they want payment for babysitting you, then they need to get that money from your mum and dad, which your dad made clear won't happen. They're trying to use your credit and or credit card and stick you with a bill. You already pointed out that they can't manage their own finances and are already in debt. Stay away from these people. And Pastor Monster says, not the arsehole, sheesh. Hide the card and keep an eye on your credit score just in case they decide to open up a new card with your SSN, assuming they have access to that. Edit, since this blew up, whatever the SSN equivalent is in the UK. Now I turn it to you guys. What do you guys think of this story? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to vote on that poll in the description for story 2. And our next story is from Blue Jasmine. Am I the arsehole for telling a pregnant friend to get out of my car because she was annoying me? I was having lunch with some friends a few days ago. One of them, Carol, isn't really my friend. She's a friend of my friend. I never liked her. She's entitled and always criticises everything she doesn't approve of. Anyway, I left early because I had to pick up my son at his grandparents, and Carol, who's 5 months pregnant, asked if I could give her a ride since she lives in the same neighbourhood, and I said yes. I recently divorced my husband because I found out he had been cheating on me. On my way to my ex's parents, Carol started questioning me as to why I decided to divorce my ex, since she has known him for years and he's a nice man. I politely told her I really didn't want to talk about it because I'm still heartbroken and extremely angry, and I get emotional just thinking about it. But she started accusing me of not giving him enough attention as his wife, which, according to her, was probably the reason why he cheated. She also said that me going to work instead of being a stay-at-home wife 24/7 was the biggest mistake I've ever done in my life. I told her it's none of her business, and she called me a frigid bitch. I lost it. I was fuming. I pulled over in front of a department store and told her to get the fuck out of my car, and then left her there. I was crying all the way to my ex's parents' house. That night I slept through my phone going off and found out that my ex's parents and my friends were angry at me for leaving a pregnant woman at the side of the road. What if bad things happened? I have to say I felt a bit guilty, but she was pushing my buttons and wouldn't listen when I politely asked her to stop. Besides, I just didn't leave her anywhere unsafe for a pregnant woman to be. I left her somewhere where she could catch a cab. Am I the arsehole? I mean, OP just didn't dump her in the middle of the motorway or anything. She dumped her outside an department store. She can go in and phone a cab, you know. It's not difficult for her. She's clearly manipulating the people around her too to turn against you. There is something wrong with, something demonic about that woman, right? Who asks for a ride and then starts slagging off their previous relationship, saying you're too frigid, you need to take care of your man better kind of stuff? Who does that? Wow. Let's have a look at the comments below to see what they say. Bride's Whale says, not the arsehole. You told her to shut up. She didn't. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Reddit says that a lot these days. Rock You Like Herman Cain says, not the arsehole. She shot first. Being pregnant is irrelevant. Looks like she's all in on the internalized misogyny. Jupiter Sunflower says, not the arsehole. You were right. It really wasn't any of her business. It's really actually invasive because she's just an acquaintance of yours and not a friend. Even if she was a friend, she didn't respect your boundaries when you said you didn't want to talk about it. If you live in a glass house, don't throw stones. Jugosaurus says, not the arsehole. She's pregnant, not disabled. Jesus Christ, she's more than capable of calling an Uber or someone else to pick her up. She sounds like a vindictive arsehole who can play victim to a T. Tell everyone what she said to you. Don't sit there and be made out to be the villain. Now I turn it to you guys. What do you guys think of this story? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to vote on that poll in the description for story 3. And our next story is from House of Noodles. Am I the arsehole for guilt tripping my dad for cutting me and my younger sister out of his will? My dad, 67 male, and I, 24 female, are very close and always have been. He is good-hearted, generous, kind person who has dedicated his life and his career to helping people. I recently found out he had adjusted his will such that I and my younger sister, 22 female, are not included as beneficiaries in any way. Instead, our older brother Nate, 45 male, would get everything. He says this is solely because he thinks my sister and I can take care of ourselves, but Nate can't. For some greater context, my dad has fully financially supported Nate for his entire life. He spends his time travelling around, painting. I think in his ideal world he'd be a professional painter, and dating lots of women. He's never had a job as far as I'm aware. He has recurring health issues stemming from an accident when he was a young adult, and he is bipolar. He's never required in-home care of any kind, but he has been intermittently in hospital throughout my lifetime, maybe an average once of every couple of years for several days at a time. I've never visited him in hospital though, nor has my dad I believe, because he's almost always travelling outside of the US. Nate and I didn't grow up together because of the age difference, and I do not like him. He's always been a condescending jerk to me, my sister, and almost everyone, and his financial relationship with my father has always seemed manipulative to me. When my dad told me about the changes to his will, I started crying. Part of it was shock/surprise, but yes, if I'm being brutally honest with myself about the type of person I am, and if I'm being transparent with you all, I had always had an expectation in my mind that when my dad died, both of my siblings and I would all receive a sizable inheritance. For context, per Google my dad would fall somewhat above upper middle class by US income standards. And it almost felt like injustice that I had always been a great daughter and very close to my dad, but I was the one being cut out of the will so that everything could go to my brother, who's always been kind of a jerk. So I cried, then I asked my dad if we could stop talking about it. That was a few days ago, and we haven't talked since. My partner says I shouldn't be reacting this way, that I should call my dad and apologise for guilt tripping him just for wanting to take care of someone who needs it more than I do. I have a moderately successful career so far. For what it's worth, I'm not in any way planning to cut off contact with my dad, spend less time with him, or convince him to change his will back. I won't even bring it up. This is solely backward looking to whether I was an arsehole when I cried and shut down the conversation. I know I mentioned before I'm really biased about Nate, so please give it to me straight if I'm clearly a greedy arsehole here. We had a story like this a couple of days ago, and I think, initially, like OP, I'd be upset at the news of that you've been cut out of the will. I think just the sentiment alone of saying, look, I don't want to include you in the will because I think your brother deserves it a little bit more, and you've been taking care of your father and looking after him all this time while Nate has been travelling around. It is like a bit of a kick in the nuts, really. And I personally can't say you was guilt tripping him anyway. You was reacting to the news that he gave you at that time, which was a bit of a shock, obviously. So no, I can't say you're the arsehole in the situation just from that alone. But let's have a look at the comments below to see what they say. Nesquick says, not the arsehole, and honestly your dad does suck for cutting you and your sister out. Yes, it's his money, but your brother obviously just expects it from him. Mama Fen says, not the arsehole for your reaction. Who wouldn't be upset if they found out their parent cut them out of the will completely in favour of someone else? Once you both had time to calm down and process this, it may be a good idea to talk about it with dad, if only you had a chance to tell him how you feel and why, and what he's done. Then you can move forward. Starfleet Auxiliary says, not the arsehole. If he really cared about Nate, he'd set up a dedicated insurance policy outside of his regular wealth to fund for his needs, not to cut off the rest of his family. It'd be cheaper too than handing someone an estate to deal with. Darjin Zen 7 says, you didn't guilt trip your father, you reacted to the news of your father is cutting you out of his will to leave everything to your arsehole older brother. It caught you by surprise because of your relationship with your father and it hurt a lot. That isn't guilt tripping, that's reacting. Your partner isn't asked for accusing you of guilt tripping your father and owes you an apology. Not the arsehole, and since you don't plan on trying to get him to change his mind and you've accepted your father's favouritism towards his mooch of a son, as the way it is you need to stop dwelling on it. You did nothing wrong. Edit to add, in all honesty it comes across like a real slap in the face that your father is doing that to the daughters who don't treat him like an ATM. He should feel guilty. Now, what do you guys make of this story? What would you do in that situation? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to vote on that poll in the description for story 4. Once again, guys, thank you for being here today. I hope you did enjoy today's stories. And if you did, you know what to do. Hit that like, that subscribe, and maybe that notification bell too. And as said before, only if you're enjoying the content, of course, because what's the point otherwise, right? Take care, guys. Have a great day now, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Much love.